Thank you very much for this honor you have awarded me tonight. I've always believed that the real measure of celebrity success was not just...
June 25th, 2009. The sun had barely risen over Los Angeles when something unimaginable began to unfold inside a quiet mansion on North Carrollwood Drive. Inside that home lay the most famous entertainer on earth, Michael Jackson, a man whose every step had once sent shockwaves through the world of music. That morning, however, those steps had stopped forever. Reports began trickling in that something had happened to the king of pop, and within hours, the world's news stations erupted. Sirens wailed, helicopters circled above, and fans gathered outside the gates in disbelief. For decades, Michael had lived under the blinding light of fame, adored yet haunted, crowned as both genius and ghost. But what truly happened in those final hours? What went on behind the mansion's locked doors before the ambulance arrived? For years, rumors filled the void. Talk of drugs, exhaustion, betrayal. Now, for the first time, the truth behind Michael Jackson's final hours can finally be told. A story of desperation, deceit, and the price of perfection that ended in tragedy. Behind the diamond glove and the moonwalk that changed history was a man collapsing under unbearable weight. In early 2009, Michael Jackson was preparing for what was supposed to be his glorious comeback. This is it, a 50-show residency in London that promised to resurrect his career and silence his critics. But for Michael, it wasn't just a comeback, it was redemption. Years of lawsuits, scandal, and media torment had left him fragile, physically and emotionally. Friends said he hadn't truly slept in years, haunted by paranoia and insomnia so deep that he often spent nights pacing the halls of his mansion. His body, once built to endure world tours, was now frail. His ribs showed through his shirts, his energy drained, yet the pressure was relentless. Promoters demanded perfection, millions of dollars were on the line, and fans expected nothing less than magic. Behind closed doors, Michael pushed himself harder than anyone realized, rehearsing until dawn, his voice trembling but determined. "I have to do this," he told his team. "I want to give them something they've never seen." But those who knew him best saw something darker: fear. He was terrified of failing, terrified of aging, terrified of being forgotten. The pressure to live up to his own legend became a silent killer. His body was screaming for rest, but his mind refused to listen. The man who had conquered the world was now at war with himself. Every step toward the stage was another step closer to his breaking point. By the spring of 2009, Michael Jackson's life had become a carefully controlled illusion. To the public, he was preparing for a triumphant return to the stage. But behind the golden curtains, his body was failing, his nerves fraying, and his dependence on medication deepening. Those closest to him said he could no longer fall asleep on his own. The man who once danced with boundless energy was now trapped in a nightly ritual of desperation. His search for rest had led him to an unlikely savior, Dr. Conrad Murray, a Houston-based cardiologist hired to manage the king of pop's fragile health. Murray's official salary was $150,000 a month, paid by AEG Live, the promoters behind the This Is It concert series. But his real role was far more personal. He was there to ensure Michael could stand, sing, and smile, no matter what it took. What it took, as it turned out, was dangerous. Jackson's insomnia was so severe that ordinary sedatives barely touched him. He had become reliant on a hospital-grade anesthetic called propofol, which he nicknamed Milk. The white liquid flowed into his veins almost every night, turning his bedroom into a private operating room. The doctor knew it was wrong. He knew propofol was never meant to be used outside a hospital, yet the pressure from above, financial, emotional, and moral, was immense. Jackson's comeback had billions of dollars at stake. AEG executives were demanding updates, the world was waiting, and Murray found himself caught in the middle of a storm. Witnesses later said Michael would beg him for sleep, whispering through tears, "I just want rest. Please, help me sleep." Each injection brought momentary relief and deeper danger. As the doses increased, so did Michael's dependency. He began showing signs of memory loss, slurred speech, and physical weakness. But there was no turning back. The doctor was now complicit in keeping a legend alive, and Michael was addicted to the illusion that he could still control it all. The contract between AEG and Dr. Murray made one thing clear: if Michael failed to perform, nobody got paid. And so the nightly rituals continued. Propofol at midnight, monitoring equipment on standby, a superstar unconscious in his bed, while a doctor watched, phone in hand, trying to balance ethics and survival. The arrangement was doomed from the start. The world saw a dazzling performer ready to reclaim his crown, but what they didn't see was a man being slowly undone by his own success, a patient who trusted too deeply, a doctor who crossed a line, and a deal that would destroy them both before dawn. June 24th, 2009. The Staples Center in Los Angeles pulsed with energy as Michael Jackson took the stage for what would be his final rehearsal. Cameras rolled, capturing what many would later call one of the most electrifying performances of his life. Dressed in a gold jacket and sunglasses, he moved with a precision that defied his age and frailty. "This is it," he shouted to his dancers, his voice echoing through the arena. He seemed alive again, energized, playful, in control. For a few fleeting hours, the world's greatest performer was back in his element, commanding the stage like he had in his prime. But when the lights dimmed and the music stopped, the illusion began to crumble. Crew members noticed how thin he looked up close, his cheeks hollow, his hands trembling. He kept rubbing his chest and complained of feeling cold. Still, he smiled and told everyone he'd see them tomorrow. "We'll kill it," he said softly, as he left the stage around midnight. Back at his mansion on North Carrollwood Drive, Michael was quiet. His bodyguard, Alberto Alvarez, recalled that he moved slowly, almost as if walking through fog. He drank orange juice, exchanged a few words with his staff, and then disappeared upstairs with Dr. Murray. That night, the rehearsals had gone well, but behind the scenes, panic was brewing. AEG executives were pressuring Murray for health updates, and some insiders feared Michael wouldn't make it to London. His doctor reportedly reassured them, saying, "He's fine, he just needs rest." But rest was the one thing Michael could no longer find naturally. In his private suite, the air smelled of antiseptic. IV bags, syringes, and oxygen tanks filled the room. It didn't look like a bedroom, it looked like a clinic. According to phone records, Murray spent much of the night pacing, texting, and making calls to women in Las Vegas and Houston, all while preparing the drugs Michael demanded. By 1 a.m., he began the routine: Valium, lorazepam, midazolam, each failing to put Michael to sleep. Finally, after hours of pleading, the singer begged for my milk, his name for propofol. Against every medical guideline, Murray gave in. The doctor later claimed he only administered a small dose, but investigators would discover that the amount was lethal. As the drug entered Michael's bloodstream, he finally drifted into the peace he had been chasing for years. No one knew it then, but the rehearsal that night wasn't just his last. It was his farewell. The footage that captured him dancing under the bright lights would later become the heart of the documentary This Is It, a haunting tribute to a man who seemed immortal on stage, but was quietly dying backstage. The King of Pop had given the world one last masterpiece, unaware that the final curtain had already begun to fall. The first light of dawn crept over Los Angeles on June 25, 2009. But inside the mansion on North Carrollwood Drive, time was already running out. Michael Jackson had spent the night in his bedroom, under the care of Dr. Conrad Murray, hooked up to IV lines and surrounded by medical supplies that had no place in a private home. Around 2 a.m., Michael's voice broke the silence. "I can't sleep," he murmured. His eyes were weary, his tone pleading. Over the next several hours, Murray tried everything in his arsenal: Valium, lorazepam, midazolam, but nothing worked. The star's mind, wired by years of trauma, fame, and fear, refused to rest. By mid-morning, the doctor finally gave in to the request he dreaded most: a dose of propofol. He connected the syringe, the milky anesthetic dripping through the line. "It's just to help you rest," Murray whispered. Within moments, Michael's breathing slowed, his eyes fluttered, and his body went still. Murray claimed he left the room for only a few minutes, but those minutes turned fatal. At 11:51 a.m., the doctor returned to find his patient not breathing, his pulse fading into nothing. Panicked, he began performing CPR on the bed. A mistake, as medical experts later testified, since resuscitation requires a hard surface. He shouted for help. Bodyguard Alberto Alvarez rushed in, stunned by what he saw. The king of pop, motionless, pale, eyes half open. "Don't call 911 yet," Murray reportedly said, fumbling to conceal vials and IV bags before authorities arrived. Every second mattered, and every second lost sealed Michael's fate. Finally, at 12:21 p.m., the emergency call went through. "We have a gentleman here who needs help. He's not breathing." Paramedics arrived within minutes, finding Jackson's body cold to the touch, his heart flatlined. They performed CPR for over 40 minutes as they raced him to UCLA Medical Center. Fans began to gather outside, confused by the sudden commotion. Inside the ambulance, Murray kept pumping his chest, whispering, "Come on, Michael." But the monitors stayed silent. At 2:26 p.m., the attending physician at UCLA made it official. Michael Joseph Jackson, the king of pop, was gone. As the news broke across television screens, anchors struggled to find words. Crowds formed instantly outside the hospital gates, sobbing, praying, refusing to believe what they were hearing. Around the world, people turned on their radios, half expecting to hear a correction. But there was no mistake. The boy from Gary, Indiana, who had danced his way into history, was no more. Behind the hospital doors, his body lay still while chaos erupted outside. In those final hours, the man who could make the world move with a beat had taken his last breath in silence, surrounded not by applause, but confusion, fear, and guilt. The scene at UCLA Medical Center that afternoon was something the world had never witnessed before. As Michael Jackson's ambulance pulled up, nurses and doctors were already waiting by the emergency entrance. They rushed his lifeless body inside, performing chest compressions, injecting adrenaline, shocking his heart again and again. For more than an hour, they fought to bring him back, but every attempt failed. His pupils were fixed, his pulse absent. By 2:26 p.m., the attending physician whispered the words that would echo through history. "Time of death, 2:26. A chilling silence fell over the room. Moments later, a nurse drew a white sheet over the body of the most famous entertainer on the planet. Outside, the world was exploding. News outlets scrambled to confirm the unthinkable. Within minutes, TMZ broke the story. Michael Jackson rushed to hospital. Possible cardiac arrest. Then came the update. Michael Jackson is dead. The internet crashed under the weight of disbelief. Twitter, Facebook, and news websites froze as millions tried to process the news. Fans poured into the streets, crying, screaming, collapsing in grief. Los Angeles became a city in mourning. Inside the hospital, chaos reigned. Family members rushed in. LaToya, Jermaine, and Catherine Jackson, demanding answers. "What happened to my son?" Catherine cried as security struggled to keep the growing crowd under control. Dr. Murray stood off to the side, pale and trembling, clutching his phone. Witnesses said he looked lost, unable to explain himself. LAPD detectives soon arrived, escorting him to a separate room for questioning. His story was confused. He said he found Michael not breathing, that he'd tried CPR, that he didn't know what went wrong. But the paramedics were already suspicious. They had seen the propofol bottles, the IV bags, the makeshift setup in the bedroom. Something about it didn't feel right. As the hours passed, Michael's body lay in the hospital morgue under tight security. Staff members quietly took turns peeking through the small glass window, unable to believe that the king of pop, the man whose music had soundtracked their lives, was lying there motionless. Outside, fans lit candles, held up posters, and sang Billie Jean through tears. Police blocked the entrances as helicopters hovered overhead. The air was electric with shock and sorrow. That night, Jermaine Jackson faced the cameras and confirmed what millions feared. My brother, the legendary king of pop, Michael Jackson, passed away on Thursday, June 25, 2009. His voice cracked, and the world broke with it. From that moment, grief turned to disbelief, and disbelief to suspicion. What had truly happened inside that house? Why had the doctor waited so long to call for help? And what was a powerful surgical drug doing in a pop star's bedroom? These questions would soon ignite one of the most controversial investigations in entertainment history, as detectives began to peel back the layers of secrets surrounding the King of Pop's final day. Within hours of Michael Jackson's death, his mansion transformed from a sanctuary into a crime scene. Detectives from the LAPD's Elite Robbery Homicide Division descended upon the Holmby Hills estate, determined to uncover what had really happened behind those guarded gates. Inside, they found a chilling sight: oxygen tanks, IV bags filled with milky white residue, scattered syringes, and empty pill bottles lining the nightstand. Nothing about the scene resembled the bedroom of a pop legend. It looked more like a secret operating room. The drug that killed him, propofol, was never supposed to be outside a hospital, yet it was everywhere. Investigators knew immediately this was no ordinary overdose. It was criminal negligence. Dr. Conrad Murray, still shaken, was taken in for questioning. His account raised more questions than answers. He admitted to administering propofol to help Michael sleep, but claimed he left the room only briefly to make a phone call. Phone records later proved that Murray had been on the line for over 45 minutes during the critical window in which Jackson stopped breathing. Even worse, he failed to call 911 immediately, choosing instead to clean up the scene, removing vials, hiding syringes, and attempting to erase any sign of the drug. When detectives later searched his car, they found bags of medical supplies hidden inside, suggesting a hurried cover-up. Meanwhile, the autopsy confirmed what everyone feared. Michael Jackson died from acute propofol intoxication, combined with sedatives. It wasn't a heart attack. It was an overdose of hospital anesthetics administered by a trusted physician. But beneath that truth lay a deeper one: pressure. Emails from AEG Live executives revealed a disturbing tone. They were aware of Jackson's fragile state. In one message, a promoter wrote, "He's deteriorating fast. We have to get him to rehearsals or we're in trouble." Another message to Murray read, "Make sure he's ready. The show must go on." Those words, investigators argued, created an atmosphere where medical ethics were ignored, and money came first. As the evidence piled up, public outrage exploded. Fans wanted answers. How could the most famous man in the world die alone in his bed, surrounded by professionals, with no one saving him? The LAPD ruled the death a homicide. Murray was charged with involuntary manslaughter, a crime that carried only a few years in prison, but a lifetime of guilt. During the trial, prosecutors painted a harrowing picture of greed and recklessness. They showed photos of Jackson's fragile frame, weighing just 136 pounds at death. They played recordings of his slurred voice from weeks earlier, mumbling about his comeback. The courtroom fell silent. The verdict was swift. Conrad Murray was found guilty. But for millions of fans and Michael's grieving family, justice still felt incomplete. Too many powerful figures had profited from his pain, and too many questions remained unanswered. Who else knew about the nightly propofol sessions? Why didn't anyone intervene? The investigation had revealed negligence, but it had also exposed the dark machinery of fame itself, an industry that had consumed its brightest star, drained him of everything he had, and left him lifeless at 50 years old. When Michael Jackson's body was finally released from the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office, the world held its breath. The official cause of death had been ruled a homicide, but for the Jackson family, that word wasn't enough. They wanted truth, they wanted accountability, and they wanted the world to know that their beloved son and brother hadn't simply overdosed. He had been betrayed. Katherine Jackson, heartbroken and fragile, sat through interviews whispering he trusted the wrong people. LaToya, always outspoken, went further, declaring Michael was murdered. Her words echoed the pain of millions who refused to believe their idol's end was accidental. Behind closed doors, the family clashed over how to handle the fallout. Some demanded another autopsy. Others wanted immediate legal action against AEG Live, the promoters of the tour. The Jacksons believed corporate greed had pushed Michael to exhaustion, and that Dr. Murray was merely a pawn in a much bigger game. As the family grieved in private, the world mourned in public. Vigils erupted overnight, from Harlem's Apollo Theater to the streets of London, from Tokyo to Rio. Strangers held candles and sang "Man in the Mirror," their voices trembling under the weight of disbelief. Fans left thousands of flowers outside Neverland Ranch, turning it into a field of sorrow and celebration. Radio stations across continents went silent for a moment, then played Thriller, Billie Jean, Heal the World. For many, it was the end of an era, the loss of a man whose music had united generations. Then came the memorial. On July 7, 2009, over 20,000 people filled the Staples Center for a final farewell. It was broadcast live to nearly every corner of the globe. The stage where he had rehearsed his last performance now became his altar. A single golden coffin lay beneath a sea of white lilies. Stars, family members, and friends paid tribute. Mariah Carey, Lionel Richie, Brooke Shields, Stevie Wonder. His daughter Paris, just 11 years old, took the microphone, her voice breaking through tears. "Ever since I was born, Daddy has been the best father you could ever imagine." The world fell silent. Even in death, Michael Jackson united people in a way no one else could. But the mourning soon gave way to anger. Protesters demanded harsher punishment for Dr. Murray. Fans organized boycotts against AEG, accusing the company of valuing profit over humanity. Online, conspiracy theories exploded. Claims that Michael had been silenced for speaking out, that he was still alive, that his death was staged. Forensic experts dismissed the rumors, but the mystery only deepened the legend. Even as the truth unfolded in courtrooms, millions refused to let go of the fantasy that their hero was still out there, hiding, watching. For the Jackson family, grief became a lifelong companion. Jermaine said, "We lost not just a brother, but the glue that held us together." Catherine turned her pain into quiet resilience, caring for Michael's children, Prince, Paris, and Blanket, while fighting legal battles over his estate. Fans continued to visit his resting place, leaving letters that simply read, "We miss you, Michael." The tears that fell in 2009 never fully dried, and as the candles faded, one truth became clear. Michael Jackson had given everything to the world, and in return, the world had taken everything from him. In the years since Michael Jackson's passing, his legacy has remained as powerful and as complex as the man himself. The world that once idolized him continues to grapple with his loss, his mystery, and his message. For millions, he wasn't just the king of pop. He was a symbol of boundless creativity, a perfectionist who redefined music, dance, and performance forever. But behind the fame, there was always the man, the child star who never had a childhood, the adult who lived under the microscope of fame, and the artist who chased peace in a world that refused to let him rest. Michael's death didn't end his story, it deepened it. In the years following 2009, unreleased songs, handwritten notes, and studio recordings began to emerge from his vault, evidence of a restless mind that never stopped creating. Among them were love songs, social anthems, and personal reflections revealing a side few had seen. A man longing for normalcy, for love, for redemption. Producers worked tirelessly to complete albums like Michael and Escape, allowing the world to hear echoes of what could have been. And every time a new track dropped, fans felt that spark again, the same magic that once shook the earth when he first moonwalked on television. Dr. Conrad Murray served his time, but never escaped the shadow of his actions. Even after his release, he insisted he was only trying to help. The Jackson family, however, never forgave him. They believed justice fell short, that the system had punished the pawn, but not the power that stood behind him. Yet in the end, Michael's greatest justice came through his art. His records continued to sell, his music videos still inspired dancers, and generations born long after his death discovered him anew. Children in different languages tried to mimic his moves, echoing his words of unity. It doesn't matter if you're black or white. But perhaps the most haunting part of Michael's legacy lies not in the music, but in the message he left behind. His songs were filled with pleas for peace, empathy, and healing. Heal the World, Earth Song, Man in the Mirror. They weren't just pop hits. They were reflections of a soul trying to fix what he couldn't fix within himself. He warned the world about greed, about fame, about losing one's humanity, and in his own tragic way, he became the embodiment of that warning. Today, Neverland stands quiet, a relic of innocence and pain. Fans still gather on June 25th every year, leaving roses, notes, and tears. Some say his spirit still lingers there, watching over the gates, hearing the faint echoes of laughter from a time when he was just Michael, the boy who wanted to dance. His children have grown, carrying his message with grace and strength. Paris often says he was misunderstood, but his heart was pure. And maybe that's the truth history will remember, that behind the scandals, behind the masks and the rumors, there was a man who gave everything to make the world smile. The dark prince of pop, misunderstood but immortal, continues to live through every beat, every lyric, every moonwalk. He was a genius, haunted by his own brilliance. And though his final hours were shrouded in tragedy, his legacy, like his voice, will echo for eternity.